Well, let's talk about this with John Sweeney. He's a journalist and author, killer in the Kremlin, and has been out in Ukraine covering the war. Good morning to you, John.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us with your Ukrainian beanie on. Always have it on. We'll play a little clip of what Vladimir Putin had to say in a second, but just your immediate thoughts on these two men both speaking out, and the fact that Putin did not name Prigozhin he didn't name him, but Prigozhin put out a message. It wasn't on video. Most of his messages are on video. This was just on audio, but that he denied that it was a coup, which is going completely against everything he'd said on Saturday.
Yeah, it's Game of Thrones. It's the Wars of the Roses. Here is an overmighty Baron Prigozhin, formerly Putin's cook. Imagine kind of Gordon Ramsay on the rampage with that kind of language.
I think we could all imagine Gordon Ramsay on the rampage.
To be fair to Gordon Ramsay, he can talk a little crudely, but he's not a killer. Prigozhin is a killer, and he's a psychopath and a sadist. But there's a certain moment when he goes for Putin, and then Putin does something. And there was a story with not enough evidence in it in the Daily Telegraph yesterday that says that the secret police, the FSB, new name for the KGB, had got to some of the Wagnerites' children.
That was what I first assumed would have happened, that this would be the reason why they would stand down. And that's exactly the sort of thing that the FSB would do.
So that what you've got to imagine, and I'm talking about this with occasionally I write novels, with my novelist hat on, you can imagine that Prigozhin's grandson is in nursery school and suddenly he vanishes. Yeah. Nothing happens, but he's gone. He's off radar. And where is he? No one knows. And then you get a call from a Putin proxy, maybe President Lukashenko, who is the president of Belarus, but he's more like the mayor of Minsk, saying, we can sort this out. And the unstated thing is, and you can get your kids back, your it's something like this happened, I think. So in a nutshell, the way I see this is that you've got two psychopathic, pitiless killers, but Prigozhin realizes that Putin is the bigger dog.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of people are saying, although, of course, they were able to, get to Rostov-on-Don, incredibly quickly, the Russian army melted away, and they were only 2 hours from Moscow in this military this military bunch of tanks and ragtag mercenaries. Realistically, could they have taken Moscow? Was there a bit of a reality check that actually this isn't going to happen, or do you think they realistically could have?
Well, so what happened, it moved very fast on Saturday. And in the morning, I did a little video diary for my Twitter thing, which was, what's really striking about this is the way that the Wagnerites are cutting through the Russian army or the police checkpoints like butter. But the odds have to be in Putin's favor. And that was the smart thing. I should have stuck with that. Yeah. By the afternoon, not only had they taken Rostov which is it's Russian Manchester, it's the third biggest city, it's a big, big place, and everything, all of the Tsar's horses and all of the Tsar's men didn't stop Prigozhin and his people, and then they went to Voronezh, which is another big city, kind of the size of Nottingham or in scale, something like this. And then they got within 120 miles. And at that point, I kind of broke and I said, I think that now the odds are in Prigozhin's favor, because nobody is showing that they're willing to die to support the Putin regime. Yeah. And at that moment, the moment I'd said it now favors Prigozhin, that was the moment the deal was announced, or in the evening. So, and all of my, I'm in London at the moment, I'm going back to Ukraine soon. I'm taking a suitcase full of popcorn because popcorn's run out in Ukraine.
That's the thing that people want. But in terms of how this plays out, I mean, Daily Star, jokey front page, but don't go near any open windows. And we were talking about this. It was extraordinary how many people who even just speak out any vague criticism of Vladimir Putin. Certainly, any opposition leaders trying to stand in elections. Navalny and others, they end up in prison. They end up poisoned. Falling out of windows. The idea that the Yevgeny Prigozhin could could speak so openly on his Telegram feed, speak openly, absolutely disparagingly of Vladimir Putin, say he wants a coup, wants to have a new president, to march on, towards the Russian capital, and that he's going to stay alive. I mean, I imagine he's got better security than most people, but that's visible. Putin never forgives and he never forgets.
No, he is a pitiless psychopath. But you've got to remember that there is no free speech in Russia to the left of Putin at all. So anybody who is a normal conservative or a liberal or anything like that, they have no freedom of speech. But what Putin has done, and there's been more of it during the course of the war, is he has allowed people to the right of him who are even more nationalistic, militaristic, I would say fascist. Those people have been given a voice. And what Putin did was, in Prigozhin, he created a kind of a rival military pillar to the classic Ministry of Defense. And then he's effectively, he's Dr. Frankenstein, he's created the monster. And then he lost control of the monster, in part because there's something about Prigozhin in that I don't think he's quite all there, in that he became such a passionate believer in his own thing that he lost the big picture. And it feels a bit like, imagine the Church of Scientology with tanks. So Prigozhin was kind of a cult leader, and the people around him were cult adepts, and nobody is saying, Prigozhin, no, boss, you're not going to get away with this. This is foolish. You've now pushed it too far. Because Prigozhin, the way I see it, is in some kind of a cult. By the way, of course, Vladimir Putin is in a far bigger and more powerful cult. But what was fascinating, at least for a day, or most of the day, was that his own people, didn't want to die for him.
That's crucial, isn't it? That's the loyalty of this. Has this exposed that ultimate weakness?